Lisa, Erie is a good phrase, and something about it, I don't know, struck me. It's just one of those things, and it can strike each juror individually, is not only you're seeing the bullet holes and you're seeing the carnage and the damage that was done, but there was something about those flowers that got me. There was something about it's Valentine's Day, and those flowers were fresh, and there was love and about happiness, and now they're wilted and they too are dead. It was just something that kind of struck me as like an analogy, is that how impactful this could be to a jury. Of course, the prosecutor's trying to, in my opinion, shoot for that one juror or two jurors that may say, and this is what I would worry about as a death penalty prosecutor, this is so horrific, this is something we can't put our arms around, that there must have been something so mentally deficient about the guy that's the only way we can explain this kind of thing. That's what the defense wants to show, and that's what the prosecutor wants to get them over. What do you think?
Yeah, it is challenging because we know evil exists, especially in law enforcement. There are people who are just evil. And does it have anything to do with a mental disorder or how they were raised, or, they had issues with hurting animals, people who turned into serial killers. And there's some things that are just not explainable. We can't wrap our heads around it, even in law enforcement, that these things happen. But yes, when you have jurors coming from all different backgrounds, they're going to use their personal experiences, whether they've seen movies, they're fed up with these mass murders happening in schools. They're going to base it on their own personal experience. Does this person deserve to die and get out kind of free and easy, or sit in rotten jail the rest of their life? The thing is about the Parkland shooter, and I avoid saying his name because he wants this notoriety. If he does sit in jail, he gets to read all the publications about him. He gets to think about it, relive it over and over again, which a lot of these mass murderers like to do. He wanted to be the #1 mass murder killer, to have the highest deaths. That was his goal. February 14th. Yeah. Sandy Hook happened February 14th, and we had 20 dead there. So his goal was to beat that.
I like that argument about, they use it, it's called an aging out expert. And the expert would testify, or the argument goes, that life in prison is far worse than the death penalty. I used to like to retort that argument when I was a prosecutor, saying, well, it takes sometimes 10, 20 years, at least in the state of New Jersey, to secure an actual death conviction, so he can spend a lot of time in jail and then be executed. We'll see what goes on if those arguments are allowed to be made in that particular court. Lisa Lockwood, I want to go to you on this to talk about the testimony that came out on the witness stand in this victim impact statements was nothing short of sadly riveting, profoundly disturbing, that I found myself and the colleagues here at the Law and Crime Network, from producers to lawyers to hosts, who are used to dealing with this professionally, overwhelmed with emotion, tears in their eyes as they were listening to this. What about the victim impact statements here had such a profound effect on us emotionally, that us professionals who are used to dealing with this were so overwhelmed?
Yeah, of course, because we're human. It's the humanity of it. These beautiful, beautiful children, these lively children that had so much ahead of them, as cliche as it is, they did not deserve this. And I'm so, so happy about this initiative that's being put together, because this is something I've said all along. We need to harden our targets. Evil is not going away anytime soon. We have copycat mass murderers. We have people who are looking at this as a game. We have video games that just completely compel kids to want to shoot, to want to get real firearms. And we have parents who indulge these kids. Right. These kids should not have weapons. Bottom line, they should not have weapons, should not have access to it. But even more so, we need the schools to be protected at all costs.
Lisa, a tremendous program, but I'll be honest with you, it's maddening to me to listen to this. Now, you were a tactical SWAT officer. We have been talking about school shootings, and we have been talking about crisis intervention, mandatory teacher training, model reunification plans. I was since 2007. We knew when we went to a scene, and if it was a catastrophic incident, whether it be natural or man-made, we knew the principal, the janitors, the keys, the entrance, the egress. We had photographs, so we weren't just getting there. We knew who was going to be staged, where they were going to be staged, where media would be, where law enforcement would be. We knew how to expatriate people. We were giving training on what to recognize. I just, it's so disparate. Now, the mental, I'll get into the mental health piece in a minute, but all of these things, some places are doing them. I think there's something that's bigger that needs to be done here. I think it's great. I think what the man's doing is great. It needs a federal response. It needs to be a uniform best practices that goes throughout the country, because how could it be in my county where I only had 44 police agencies to deal with that we were able to put something so prolific together, and here we are 15 years later, and this gentleman doing the right thing is trying to get these things done now. Why aren't law enforcement agencies throughout the country talking about best practices?
Yes, funding, funding, funding. And that's why I do believe what you said. The federal government needs to come with a plan and have the funding available for it. Uvalde, Texas had millions and millions of dollars funding for them to have a plan in place, execute the plan. We had multiple agency response. We had people that were going to the building and not taking action. Nothing was followed. So here we have the funds, but now we don't have implementation. So yes, this is how we protect America. It is a federal program mandated with a manual, with a procedure that everybody follows. And obviously there's a template that's going to be different for every school. But yes, we need police officers trained, obviously, to know the layout of schools, but we also need the mental health process of this, because you can sit here all day long and try to protect that school, but if parents are turning a blind eye, that's where I think this Mr. Montalto is going to help with that program, being able to red flag parents who are not taking action when they find out that their children are having mental health crises.
Yeah, and it's not just parents. I mean, I remember getting a lot of pushback from the educators, and we had to do a mandated training, not just for principals and vice principals, but others, and they had to sign off on that you went through this training and you were advised as to what to do. We had professionals come and explaining about what to do during the actual active shooting, and then with the ancillary services coming in, so you didn't have mayhem with officers standing in hallways with shields and guns, not knowing what to do. We had incident command. We knew exactly what everybody was supposed to do before we even walked on the scene. I'm not bragging about what we did. I'm just saying that this is something that's been around for a long time. Lisa, you know what strikes me, I agree with the professor, as I often do, and with you as well, is that we teach our children to be kind to people, to treat them with respect, to listen to their opinions, to agree to disagree. We adults say those words, but the children seem to follow it more than the adults do in reality. I mean, I would almost think that you could have the children write the bills that could make this thing happen, as opposed to the adults. What can we do here, Lisa?
Our children are the sitting ducks. So I would imagine that a lot of students have come forward with their own types of initiatives. We just haven't heard of them. They haven't been publicized yet. They are the victims. They are sitting there. School-free, gun-free zones in schools. Evil people and mentally challenged people do not read signs. We need to be able to protect these children. We have to have the right people in these schools, and I've said this over and over again, too many years. Let's hire off-duty police. Let's hire military. Let's hire National Guardsmen, people who are willing to go there and have a job where that is their only job is to maintain that school, to make it safe, and to have a weapon that would go up against somebody who is a complete rogue with a mental disability or just pure evil that could enter that building. There's no reason for that. Gun-free zones at schools. We need to protect our kids.
One caveat I'd add to it, too, I'd like to say to my educator friends, because I was there doing this as the head prosecutor, you need to be a part of the solution too, and can't just rely on law enforcement to make it all go away. And that means that sometimes you need to change your contracts or whatever it may be in order to assist in a unified effort. At least it's an experience that I dealt with that I felt was rather unfortunate. Guys, All right, Lisa, so let me throw you some heady expert law here, and I know that you're on the cop side of these equations, but the Daubert hearing is dealing whether or not things are going to be admitted because they're scientifically reliable or not. So what I was hearing the prosecution's witness say, their expert was saying that he doesn't agree with the other expert. Typically speaking, in a case like that, the judge is going to say, well, wait a second, that's what trials are for. You could put your expert on, they put their expert on, you cross-examine, they cross-examine. The jury will make a determination as to whether or not they believe one expert or another. But right at the end, he kind of said the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders, doesn't recognize fetal alcohol syndrome as something that you can rely upon right now. But given a death penalty case and the fact that the judge has wide latitude to allow mitigating circumstances come in, do you anticipate that the judge is just going to allow it to come in and let the jury make the credibility call? I mean, certainly he can be cross-examined on that finding on the DSM-5. What are your thoughts?
Just because it doesn't show up in the DSM-5 as a criteria for a specific disorder doesn't mean that he did not have it. And I would imagine it's not in there because they were not able to isolate what's going on inside the brain. A lot of people go through life with fetal alcohol syndrome and come out okay on the other side. So I don't think that there's enough, they don't have a gradient that's large enough to say we have X amount of people who have had this disability, and this is what happened to them, and these are the things that stayed with them, without some type of MRI or something scientific that they can look at the human brain and come up with it.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll see what happens, because some judges are just pretty much going to let the defense do what they want because penalty is in play here, but we'll see what the judge rules. Lisa Lockwood, as always, great job. Really appreciate your expert opinion. Stay tuned for our regular scheduled program. That's it for me. I'll see you next week from 3 to 5 on Tuesday. Have a great week.